to another episode of Raising the Volume. My name is Charlton Singleton, and today our guest is a gentleman that is no stranger for the Low Country. He's been a pillar in our community for many, many years and has done just a boatload of great things to enhance our community, and we'll get into a lot of that. So please welcome to the show, Brother Osei Chandler.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Happy to be here.
Thank you for coming. Thank
My
you for
pleasure.
coming.
You're welcome.
So now we'll get into this a little bit later in our conversation, but I got to tell you something really quick about how I first heard of you. And I don't think I ever told you this before, but my sister, who is some years older than I am, she was off in college, and this was in the early 80s, like maybe 81 or 2 or something like the 80. She went to Wofford College in the upstate of South Carolina. And she had a friend of hers that was the college radio DJ. And so this guy would make mixtapes.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah, we did
tapes.
That. We did that.
And he had a unique style of the way he made his mixtape. He wouldn't, he wouldn't have the record play and then it'd be a clean break and something like that. He would spin the radio dial and make that sort of noise, back in the day. This, I can't remember what the first song was, but the second song on this tape that my sister had and gave to me was So Much Trouble in the World.
So Much Trouble in the World.
And that was my first time ever hearing reggae. Of course, Bob Marley has a very distinctive voice.
Yeah.
And his music had a distinctive sound to it.
That's
So
true.
that was my first introduction to reggae. That was, like I said, maybe 1981, 82, somewhere around there.
Is this your same sister that works at Trident Tech?
This is my my
Charnette.
sister Charnette, yeah.
I love it.
Fast forward to, I guess, the mid 80s or something, and weekend, I'm just sort of home, and I'm listening on the radio and I'm flipping dials, and at that point, I was kind of into classical music. So I changed the dial to 89.3.
There you go.
And I hear this song come on again. And I was like, oh, I know that song. And then at the conclusion of hearing that song, I hear these young voices talking.
Zeke Ranchero, my son.
And it was your sons.
Yeah.
Who I later, meet when we go through the Jack and Jill program, But the next week I tuned in because I was so, and that's when I heard your voice, very distinctive voice.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I ever told you that, but you're the one that really put me on the path of reggae. And I'm sure you've done that with millions of other listeners over the years.
I think that was one of my jobs to do that, especially to the black community. Because when we started doing reggae, I would say the first 8-10 years, 75% of my audiences, live shows I'm talking about, would be white. And on the radio, I would say probably 85-90% of my audience was white, until those boys, my sons, got to do the show for me when I was sick at one point. But I was glad for that. I'm glad, welcome that you did that. Ellington did the same thing, Robert, and so many others. And it makes me feel like I did what I came to do.
Absolutely. So now let's break right there. We'll come back to that.
Okay.
Let's go all the way back. Now, you have been a pillar of this community for many, many years, but you are not originally from here. Where are you originally from?
I'm from Brooklyn, New York.
Brooklyn, New York.
Bed-Stuy, Bushwick, Flatbush, East New York, Brownsville. When you're a Brooklynite, you kind of move around a lot,
Right,
you know?
okay.
But I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York.
Okay.
I went to college in 1964, all the way out to Jacksonville, Illinois, McMurray College. And I came back to, and I graduated in 68, right on time. And I came back to Brooklyn and met my wife. We had a couple of boys, and we broke up. And she was from here. My wife was from here.
You know what? I never knew that.
Yeah, she's from Somerville, Lincolnville, all that
Yeah,
area
yeah.
there, yeah. And she was, this is a good story right here, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Sadiq is her name. She She was raised by her sisters, Liz and then Pearl. Pearl lived in Brooklyn, and Pearl had married one of my cousins. When I went away to college in 1964, it was a family gathering, and I met Sadiqa then. Her name was Miriam, they called her Minky. But she was 14 and I'm 17, and I ain't got no time for no little skinny girl from down south, you know, with that funny looking talking, funny sounding talking. So I just went away to college. I came back, and I was going around showing all my aunts and uncles how they helped, because they would send me care packages and $3 and things like that to help me get through, because it was tough. And now she's grown up. Now she's 18, and she's wearing a mini skirt, and she's 6 feet tall.
Oh, yeah, that's
bam,
right.
The knockout punch. But the lovely part of it is that she knew my whole family before I knew her. Because we had a close family. My mother had 7 sisters and 2 brothers. And they would always get together Mother's Day, Father's Day, Christmas, and whatever else was happening.
That's the norm.
And she was always there. But I was away for those 4 years. So I come back, she's grown, and everybody loves her. And I had to get grilled by my cousins. What's your intentions, young man? I'm like, what y'all teach me? I didn't go. I'm not going to go.
Right.
But it was beautiful, man. It was, and we had 40 years before she succumbed to breast cancer about 11 years ago this month. So, but we had a bump in the road at one point, and the boys were 2 and 3 or 3 and 4, something like that. And she left to come back to South Carolina. And I came down a couple of times and visited, and decided to give myself a better chance, because I was in the wrong for our breakup, okay? And so I kind of had to court her again, but I didn't. I really focused on being a good father, because I didn't have that example. So my father taught me how not to be a father. So, and we kind of courted again, and next thing you know, we're back together, and now we got a baby girl, Naima, who is now retired from the Coast Guard after 22 years. So this is a long story, and it has more ups than downs. That's what I want to say about that.
Right.
Yeah, it was great.
So now you mentioned sort of a large family.
Yes.
Was there, and I usually ask this about a lot of the folks that I have interviewed or chatted with, because of their activism in the community and all of the work. Was that something that was happening when you were younger? Like a lot of people have told me how it was when they were younger and their parents or aunts and uncles or their church community or just their community in general were very active in making sure that the youngsters came along the right way or as best as possible. Was that something that was big when you were younger?
Well, my aunts, I love them. They make you feel so good. Anytime I said anything like "excuse me" and "great," and you got such a nice manners. That way they did. They did not get involved in what was happening in the civil rights movement and things like that. And when I went off to college and I organized the Black Students Union, and I started growing a natural and all these things like here, when I would come home, my uncles would take me aside and ask me my opinion of current events. Okay, and I tell them what I thought about the Black Panthers or whatever I was working on. And they wouldn't never criticize it, never critiqued it, but always patted me on the back and wanted to know what I felt like. And that made me feel super, that they respected my opinion and my experiences. So that kind of gave me a lot of self-confidence. That boosted my confidence in myself, and that I was doing the right stuff. And, you know, they would write me letters every once in a while, but mostly it was those home visits with my family members, and they'd take me aside and ask me, well, what do you think about Dr. King? What do you think about Malcolm X? And I'd tell them, and they were like, okay. You know? So that was beautiful.
So when you were away at college, and you mentioned that you organized a Black Student Union?
Yes.
What was the climate like at the college that you attended?
Well, I attended a school called McMurray College, which just closed down. They were struggling, and then COVID hit them, and they had to close up. But it was basically kind of like the college at Charleston in the Midwest. When the college at Charleston was an all-girls school, McMurray had been an all-women's college. And probably about 10 years, 12 years before I attended, they started letting men in, but not too many black folks. So when I attended that college, it was 1,000 students. I made like number 13 African Americans. Okay, so it was very different. I met people that never met a black person before, you know, and someone want to touch your skin and see if it rub off and things like that. And I had to check myself because for a minute I was trying to fit in, and it's not a fit like that. I just had to be me. But it didn't take me long to figure that out. I remember when my campus, my dormitory was about a quarter mile from the main campus that you had to walk down the path. I remember walking the path one day and some of those fellas said, you know, Terry, with my name, Terry, Osei Terry Chandler, said, oh, you know, Terry, you're not like those other guys. I said, uh-oh. I don't know. I didn't want to answer what they were talking about, but I had to reflect on what I was doing here, and I kind of had to revert back to being myself.
What were you majoring in?
I majored in sociology and anthropology because I didn't know what it takes to change the community. I thought I could be a sociologist, you know, a social worker, I should say.
Right.
But you don't become a social worker by taking sociology.
Right.
And I did not get along with my advisor.
Right.
Okay, this is a short
Been there,
story.
done that.
Yeah, man. I remember we were in class in a big auditorium, a small auditorium one day, and he was talking about Cain killing Abel, and one of the guys had a mark of the beast on him, and the mark of the beast was black skin. So I'm looking in the Bible, I don't see nothing where it says what the mark was. Dr. Simmons. Yes, Chandler. I said, nothing in the Bible says what the mark is. For all we know, it could be blonde hair and blue eyes. Get out! Get out of my classroom.
Wow.
So I left. A couple of weeks later, the Time magazine came out and discredited that the Peking man was the oldest living relative of Homo sapiens. Now they found, I think it was Lucy in Tanzania. Dr. Simmons,
Right.
the oldest man that comes from Tanzania. You're all Africans. Get out of my class. So I didn't have anything to do with him for 4 years except sign my schedule.
Right.
And I went with what was in the catalog. By the end of the school, by the end of my 4 years, I was 2 classes short, which I didn't realize. So I had to go to summer school. But anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Right. Yeah. So were you involved with any other groups or things on campus?
Well, like I said, they had a civil rights organization where the head of the organization was titular. One of my roommates, Horace Harris, he was just the head, but the white folks ran it, you know. And at the time, we was talking about black power and everything like that, and I felt like we needed to have a black-run organization. So I formed a Black Student Association, and I partnered with the Boys and Girls Club, and we did tutoring, and for remedial, and we did acceleration, and we taught about black history and culture. And we did not get approved by the school, so I didn't get any extra credit or independent study or nothing like that. We just did it. And then we collaborated with the Students for Democratic Society when Dr. King went to Cairo, Illinois, because we were 200 miles from that Chicago area. Rented a bus, and we took our students, and we all marched with Dr. King in Cairo, Illinois, which was a very frightful thing. To be vilified by 6-year-olds calling you niggas and stuff like that is scary. Even though we had a phalanx of police officers from all jurisdictions protecting us, but that's the time Dr. King got hit by a rock. Somebody threw a rock and hit him in the crowd. Yeah. So what we did, we had to collaborate with I learned, collaborate, work with other people, But this is us, Y'all are y'all, and we're going to do these things together. Right, we have commonalities. We'll conduct our business that way, and we'll do our business.
Right.
Also did radio in college, and that's what got me into radio.
This is the beginning of radio for you?
Yeah, okay. Well, not exactly. I mean, I DJ'd in high school, because when I went to high school, we had dance every other Friday. I used to go to Catholic church, and come to the dance, and the boys would be on one side of the gym, the girls on the other side, right? So you walk off, okay, you get your nerve up, you walk all the way across and ask that girl to dance, and she say no. You be like, damn. Then you ask the next one, she got to say no because her friend said no, you do 3 or 4 of them, and then you got to go back, and your boys, look at you. So I cut that mess out and became the DJ.
I see.
And we threw parties when I was in high school. We had a club called the Syntherians, 7 of us. We threw parties, and we take our money that we raised from the parties, and we take the neighborhood kids to the Bronx Zoo and different places, the museums and things like that. So in a way, I guess that informed what I do in Charleston. Not so much kind of family, but they were my extended family, 7 brothers. Okay? And at that time, heroin was the scourge of cats our age. Okay, everybody was shooting up and overdosing and stuff. So our job was to keep each other off drugs.
Right.
Keep each other off drugs, and we did that. Everybody that came through that came out okay. All 7 of us.
So, when did you officially, I guess I should say, relocate or come to this area?
I moved to Charleston November 4th, 1977.
Oh,
Yeah.
good day.
Yeah. I remember the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was momentous. You know, growing up in Brooklyn, you don't think about, I'm going to go down the South, move down south to South Carolina. Okay,
Right.
that don't even cross your mind. It's like,
Right.
but, you know, my kids were here, and the love of my life was here, so it worked out really fine for me.
Right.
And Kuumba is one of my favorite principles of the Nguzo Saba. It means creativity. And the definition is to always do as much as you can in any way that you can to make your community more beneficial than when you inherited it. So when you step into a place, you're supposed to do something to enhance that situation.
Right.
And I was able to do that here. I don't think I would have been able to do radio in Brooklyn. I don't think I would have been able to do soccer, the Ebony City Soccer Club, Little Peles
I'm gonna get to that.
in Brooklyn. You know what I mean? So
Right.
having all this space and lax, it gave me an opportunity to fill some space. Yeah.
So now, I thought about this the other day with my own experience, because there's a lot of people that know me as Charlton Singleton, the performer. There's some people that only know me as Charlton Singleton, the teacher. There's some people actually that only know me as Charlton Singleton, the guy that plays the organ at church on Sundays.
I see that. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And so there's many different hats.
Yeah.
There are people that know you from your radio program. There are people that know you from other things. Let's start with rehabilitation. Did you had a career in what do they call it? Is it rehabilitation services or something?
No, I work for the Educational Opportunity Center, which is a federally funded program that is funded under the same umbrella as, say, Upward Bound or Talent Search and those type of programs.
Okay.
The EOC was designed to help adults go to college to enhance their career opportunities. And that was my job, and I really loved it because we could actually help people when they knew that they had opportunities, but they didn't know. So it was my job to go out into the community, tell folks about open enrollment or free admissions or financial aid, how you get into college, how you select a career, and and it was our job. I had to do 300 people. I had to serve 300 people a year. Now, not all 300 were going to college. Maybe 12% of those were, but that was wonderful. It was more than the average. See?
Right.
So I did that I was a counselor in that program for several years, decades, 2 decades, and then I became the director at one point, which now gave me the opportunity to influence 2,000 people there, because the program handled 2,000. Each counselor handled 300 people.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
It was beautiful. Yeah, I still hear from people about that. But now all of these things work together. You know, the radio program, I could talk about our workshops coming up, you know what I mean? And at the workshops, when you got a lull, I'm playing some relaxing reggae music or some African music or some jazz or something like that.
Right.
And then the Little Peles, we were the first African-American youth soccer organization in the state, okay? And
Now, see, I remember, or I first heard of Little Peles because, and I grew up more so with my brother. My brother was more of a football and a baseball player. My younger cousins, like Donnell Singleton, you know, and all of that, and Gina, and Stacia, you know, they're all my cousins. But
Ryan
they
and
were,
Richie.
Richie and Ryan, they were always talking about, we're going to play soccer, we're Little Peles. That was their thing. And that's where I first heard about that program. And I didn't mean to cut you off,
That's
which
okay.
you were starting it up, but tell us about the beginnings of that and how you became this larger than life figurehead of that.
Well, I tell you, when I first moved to South Carolina, my wife had lived here already for a year, okay, before I moved down. And she had taken my son, Zeke and Cheo, to they were living in North Charleston, so she took them to Danny Jones and signed them up for soccer.
Right.
Okay. So she did. And the first year I moved here, I worked every weekend at Channel 4, so I never got to see them play or anything. The following season, I left Channel 4 because they didn't want to give me a raise.
Okay.
I was making $2.50 an hour. Minimum wage was $2.35. Well, minimum wage was moved to $2.50, and they didn't want to give me $2.65. So I said, I'm out of here. And so now I had a free weekend. So I took them to to sign up for soccer that season. And the director of Parks and Recreation in North Charleston asked me would I take over the group until the coach, who was a sailor, came back from out to sea. So I did. I didn't know anything much about it, but I line up, we're going to make a circle, hold hands, and I got them doing exercises. And I would go home and study about soccer and go back and do some more training. Well, we actually did very well that fall, and and then we have a winter break, which is when FIFA type soccer kicks in.
Right.
North Charleston, their soccer was kind of like Dixie baseball.
Yeah.
They didn't want to be Little League because it was integrated.
Right.
Okay, so their soccer didn't have the same rules, but I learned by being on the radio and doing PSAs, listening to the PSAs that were programmed into my I was working with Z93, I think, into whatever the traffic was. I learned that they were having another soccer program, okay, and that they were signing people up, called up, and I moved from North Charleston to downtown now, and I saw what we could do with 4 black kids in a white league.
Right.
We did very well. We came in second place in the championship that year, only because I didn't know about corner kicks. But anyway, so now I'm downtown. I'm thinking, shoot, we can do this, So we got a team together, and I asked the head of the Parks and Recreation. It was a white guy, but he was from South Africa too. I can't remember his name, but Modi Risher worked for him.
Modi Risher.
Yeah.
Oh, there's another name.
Yeah. So I went to them and said, look, I got these kids, and I'd like for you to help us get them in the league, et cetera. I said, man, black kids don't want to play no soccer. They want to play baseball, football, and basketball. And I'm saying, but we just had a successful, in North Charleston. I said, yeah, well, whatever. So I just formed the organization on my own, and I called them the Ebony City Soccer Club, with the help of Wendell Johnson and Jack McCrae. We just took the name Little Peles, okay? And so I remember because the kids, they were reluctant. They didn't really want to do this because they didn't have no pads on. They wear these little shorts and everything. And so most of the kids came from Robert Mills Manor, but some from Mount Pleasant at this time and some from James Island. Even I don't know how they got it. But anyway, my co-coach, Cito Lindsay, we would go down to Moultrie Park and practice. And the kids from the Manor wouldn't show up. So I would go into the project, talk to Letha Mae Simmons, Big Gene, and Jerome Small. They get the kids out. But Wendell Johnson let us use his studio, and I got a training tape for Peles. And the kids saw him, and they were mesmerized because he was doing all kind of stuff with the ball.
Right.
It's like the difference between a set shot and a jump shot.
Right.
You know what I mean? So he put the flavor into it for them. So next time when we have practice, I said, okay, Cito, you go to the park, I'll go to the projects and get these kids out. Well, they kicking the soccer ball, kicking the basketball, and trying to do that stuff they saw Peles do.
Right.
So when it came to name ourselves, I said, okay, what do you want to call yourself? They said, we want to be the Peles. We want to be Little Peles. I said, okay, we're going to be Little Peles, okay? And Wendell Johnson said, no, we're no little. Come on, it's going to be Little Peles. I said, okay. So Cito, he's a Panamanian. He said, how about Los Peles? Wendell said, that sounds like y'all lost the game already. So he said, Little Peles. I said, Little Peles. He said, no, Little.
Little, yeah.
Little. So that's how we came, L-I-L Peles.
Yeah.
We won the state championship in the first year.
Wow.
In the second year, that was with one team. We had too many kids. I didn't realize about the age groups and all that stuff. So we had extra kids that couldn't play because they were too old. We had more kids that couldn't play because they were too young. So after the first season, we fleshed out those other 2 teams, and now we got 3 teams. And the following year, we won again state championship in a different age group. And the third year, the girls said, who were cheerleaders, they said, we don't want to be cheerleaders no more. We want to play too. And they won the state championship the first year in the recreational division. So.
Peles. I mean, that's a legendary team around here, or just organization around here.
It was beautiful. Shanita and Miss TB, they were our second generation team mothers.
Right.
And they were very good team mothers.
Now, see, they're my family.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, you know.
I can see it in your face.
Yeah,
I love them. I love them to death. Man, they're so beautiful and so helpful, you know, and make it work. It was a good experience for everybody, all the way around. Gave me a chance to do what I thought I wanted to do. That is uplift the community. So now I got kids doing soccer, which is going to give them access to college. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the world.
I know some of my cousins, they got soccer scholarships
Yeah.
at major universities.
And many kids, we would travel to different towns and even states to play in different tournaments. And they'd never been anywhere before, you know.
Right.
So, okay, and I never ate in a restaurant where you sit down and put a napkin on your lap, you know. And I remember one time we were in Tennessee somewhere, and we left. The coaches left a tip on the table. One of the kids took, and somebody told them. I said, "What's you doing?"
They stole it.
Well, you left the money, coach. I didn't know. I said, so many life lessons that we had that were outside of kicking a ball or manipulating the ball.
Life lessons, but they last.
Yeah, we had Swahili chants. Harambe, Mojo Tutashin, all put together, Mojo Tutashin, together we will win. And people would say, what are they saying?
Right.
What are they saying? Kill whites, I don't know. So then we had to say, what does Harambe mean? All pull together. How many? All? 2? No. How many? All pull together. Harambe. You know, they still, when they see me now with beards and kids of their own, they say, Harambe, coach.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
That's a legacy.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
One of the best things I ever did besides having kids on my own. Yeah.
So, you're here. How did what we've all come to know as Roots Music Karamu start?
Well, I was working for the South Carolina Department of Labor, and one of the cats that worked under me, I was a supervisor there. And one of the guys told me about a jazz show on Wednesday night jam session on public radio. He told me a guy named Tony Robertson was running the show and that I should go meet him. So I called Tony up and said, Jack Weens told me to call you. I'd like to come and see you. And bring a couple of records. I had a nice little collection. I haven't been in college. All that stuff came with me when I came home.
Yeah.
So he said, yeah, come on by. So it was on Broad Street. I think it was the People's Building, somewhere on Broad Street. Second floor, I went up there. It was 7 o'clock at night, 7 to 9 was the show. And I went in, and Tony was the only person in the office, in the suite where they had everything. And I said, wow, this looks like the same setup I had in college. Wow, this is deep. He said, well, look, maybe you could play a couple of records. I can run downstairs and get me something to eat from the Hungry Lion. So I had some Yusef Lateef, and I forget what else it was. I played. He said, okay, if you know how to do this, go ahead and play a couple of records, but don't open the mic. So I played a couple of 2 or 3 tunes. He came back. He said, what'd you play? I showed him. He said, okay, go ahead and back announce them. So I did. He said, look, you look like you know what you're doing. He said, this is my last show. Would you like to take it over?
Wait a minute. He said this is his last show right then.
This was his last show, and he was leaving. And if I would like to take over his show, he hadn't told anybody it was his last show. I said, sure. So he told me what to do. So when you get in at 7, you got to click these buttons here because Columbia has control over the station right now.
Right.
You take local control, and when you finish, do this, that, and the other thing, and here's the keys. So I must have been there for 2 or 3 months before I met anybody from the station. Yeah, but you know, things was running smooth, so they didn't care, they didn't mind.
Right.
And at one point, I remember they asked me, I think Marcia Warnock, I don't know if you know Marcia, and a guy named John Dozier, who's no longer in this area. They were running the show over there, the station. Said, we got a space on Saturday, we want to do another jazz show. And this is where I talked to Jack and Walter. I said, I want to do another jazz show. I think we should do a roots music show. What do you mean? I said, in my mind, if it has a drum and a bass, they're related. Okay, if that's the main part of it. Okay, if we got flutes and violins, we can let that slide.
Right.
So the concept was focus on the Caribbean, touch Africa, touch R&B, touch blues, and whatever else you want to do. Let's mix it in and show that all these things are related. And this will show our people that we're trying to reach that they are Africans in their roots. You know what I mean? Because they don't know. They don't know. So that's what I did. I started that show. Now I had two shows. I had one on Wednesday and one on Saturday. Volunteers, both of them, but no pay here. So I asked Jack McCrae to give me a hand with the jazz show because he was very knowledgeable. And so he did, and eventually he took over the jazz show, and I continued to focus on roots music, Karamo. And I had a nice collection of records that I brought with me from Brooklyn because I found a record store that was going out of business. And I didn't know much about reggae, but my best friend Bill Jones took me to see the Mighty Diamonds at a club called Your Father's Mustache out in Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn. A couple of weeks later, we went down to the Felt Forum, and we saw Burning Spear, when Burning Spear was a trio, okay? So Burning now this record store around the corner from me was closing up, a couple of corners, and I bought a bunch of that stuff, Third World, Mighty Diamond. I bought all that stuff that they had. It was very inexpensive. And so I had to call what to start my show, my new radio program with. Man, it was wonderful.
So the radio show starts, and as you said, it was all kind of volunteer.
Still is.
Still is. When did the powers that be figure out that this is something that's catching on, that a lot of people are tuning into, on this weekend, kind of late night show? When did the interest from the higher ups, I say, start to come?
It seemed like they hardly ever took notice, tell you the honest truth. But I started getting offers to come to Z93, WPAL, and 96 Wave and B90. I worked on all of those stations.
PAL.
Different at the time. But I always kept public radio going because all these other stations seeing that I got a pretty good following. And then we started doing shows. Jack and me and Walter, we formed the organization called the Group for Integrated Studies, and put on the first Piccolo Spoleto event. We had 14 events in 10 days or something like that. We had jazz all around, and we had the Gourmetisserie. That's where we put our reggae show.
The Gourmetisserie.
Yeah. And we also put in Carlos Garnett and the Universal Black Force. You ever heard of them?
Yeah.
And then we had Plunky and the Oneness of Juju on the front steps of the what's that building down there?
Oh, the Custom House?
Customs House.
Yeah.
We had them on the front steps.
Now I know a lot of people that still to this day talk about the legendary reggae block parties.
Super duper.
Super duper.
Incredible.
And you are responsible, let's just call it what it is, you are responsible for bringing some really like mega superstar reggae artists, in general, to the city of Charleston.
Yeah, but not so much to the block dance because they had a tight budget.
Right, they did, yeah.
But once in a while we lucked out because somebody who they were between North Carolina and Atlanta. They had an extra day, maybe a Thursday night, so we can get them for a low rate. And we had them at the King Street Palace. At the King Street Palace, we had Third World, Steel Pulse, Burning Spear, Culture, Lucky Dubé. I mean, so much good stuff, man. But usually it was a Wednesday night or a Thursday night, man.
King Street Palace.
Well,
right. I forever think of it as County Hall.
Okay. Well, when I first came here, it wasn't anything.
Oh, yeah.
It was just sitting there. And all of a sudden, some people, we're going to put some shows in here. And Mary Feldman, I think was her name, said, let's do some reggae shows. You know the reggae guys? I said, sure. Right. So I do a little background work, and we got some nice shows in there. Yeah.
So now, and I got to bring this up just because of where we are right now.
Okay.
In the Gilliard Center. You had arguably one of the biggest names in reggae that you introduced.
Yeah.
on this stage.
Yes, sir. It was super duper again. I was trying to get Bob Marley here, and I had to talk to the man who was running the show here in terms of who you could book or not, Herbie Cunningham, and he talked me out of it. He said, you can't bring Bob Marley here for one show. He knew the numbers, and said you have to have at least 2 shows to pay him, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, let's do 2 shows. He said, no. So I talked to Larry Walker and Al Goss. They were running a club called Miskins on Market Street. So they backed the show for Peter Tosh to be here. On the bill, they had Charlie Earlin. Because they didn't think Peter Tosh would fill up. They said, well, maybe get some Charlie Earlin fans in here too. And then it was still looking kind of light, and so we brought in another show, a Trinidadian player, Raleigh Gray. He had a little calypso. So we had Raleigh Gray, Charles Earlin, and Peter Tosh on this stage right here. And I was beside myself, because...
That's heavy.
It was very heavy.
Yeah.
I was the MC for that thing, and I introduced him as the stepping razor. And I had a big dagger in my belt. I said, and now, I'm dangerous. I pulled out my number and said, these are Bush Doctor. I named all the big hits at the time. And I said, and the stepping razor. The band hit. And I stepped off the stage where I was high. I was like this feet high off the floor. And he came out and he put on a hell of a show.
Yeah.
He put on a hell of a show. We barely broke even, though. And no disrespect to the Gilliard Center, but one of the cats, I'm going to let that slide.
Okay.
Yeah, let it slide. Somebody was scalping our tickets. That's why somebody was scalping tickets. It wasn't Herbie Cunningham. It wasn't Herbie. Okay.
Well, so from what I understand, because I'm late to the game with regards to reggae, but from what I understand, and I have heard, and I believe it, that you are responsible for a lot of these mega artists that would come through Charleston, like a Peter Tosh. My sister's favorite group, my cousin Deanna, their favorite groups have always been Steel Pulse.
Oh my gosh.
And I can recall Steel Pulse coming to Charleston quite a few times, whether it was them playing at the Music Farm or Miskins was the hot club that a lot of bands would come through. How did you get into befriending a lot of these groups and people, or getting to the point where people would trust you when you say they will hit very hard and do very well here? Is that from the radio show?
Well, that started in having a radio show, plus having Jack and Walter with their minds. Jack, they was putting on shows, so we did stuff in the clubs, and we did stuff mostly with regional. We didn't have any local group here, but we had Mystic Vibration coming out of Columbia. We had Mojo Naya. Yeah, they were probably the first reggae band to perform at the Reggae Block Dance.
Yeah.
And I learned about them from being in New York. I saw them at a Prospect Park one time. I got their information. And then...
Mojo Naya, in a backwards kind of way, helped me get a car. I was working at a CD store, and I was looking to buy a new car, and I went to this car dealership, and I was talking with the guy, the salesman, and he says, well, what do you do for a living, whatever, and I said, well, I'm, just out of college and everything, and I work at this music store, and I told him what the store was, and he said, you all get a lot of different types of music, or is it just mainly, rock and R&B or the country and stuff like that? And I said, well, if it's printed, then we could probably get it. And he said, well, man, there's this band that I like, and I just can't find their music anywhere. There's this band called Mojo Naya.
All right.
And oddly enough, someone, like maybe a week before, just really odd that someone else had mentioned Mojo Naya. And I found their recording in our catalog system. And I said to the guy at the shop, of course I can get it. Of course I can get it. He said, if you get me Mojo 9, I'll knock $2,000 off of your car.
Whoa.
So
I wish I could have met that guy.
and to this day, sometimes when he comes to, he'll show up at shows, you know, and he'll just look at me and he'll go, Mojo 9, bro, Mojo 9, you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
So yeah, I'm sorry, I just had to throw that in because
That's fine.
Mojo 9 is a blast from the past.
Yeah, man.
Fantastic band.
They were very good. You know, and a couple of cats in that group, they got a show on Friday night and a show on Saturday night. In those days, half the band would sleep, or more than half the band would sleep in my house until they met the girls, and then they
Right.
So now I'm getting up in the morning. Where you going? We got a soccer practice. Soccer, come on. Because they Jamaicans or whatever.
Right.
And they know this stuff, so they would come and help train the kids in skills. I remember Zeke Way and Little Yachty were my defenders, but they were two string beans. And when the cats on Mojo 9, I can't remember which cat it was. Might have been Robin, I'm not sure. Anyway, we showed them some techniques for them to defend. You can shake and bake on defense just like you do on offense, you know, fake a guy this way and then pull. And he gave them some techniques, and boy, it was so sweet. And so to have the bands come and give soccer instruction to little Peles, and then we play on the club that night.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. Ellington told me about a time I had a band perform. I think it might have been Ital at Burke High School. I'd forgotten all about it. That was his first time ever seeing a reggae band. I got them to perform in the courtyard at Burke High School. I don't know what that was. I think it might have been it wasn't a fundraiser because it was free.
Right.
I think they did it for free because we had a show that night, but now they do something for the community.
Right.
So they would do that. Yeah, that was something.
So now your show is into year number 40. This is 42?
42nd year.
42 years.
April 21st will make 42 years on the air with this reggae show. Well, people say it's a reggae show. I say it's a reggae show, but it's not. It's primarily a reggae show, but it could be anything I want to be. So.
As a
volunteer. I'm sorry. I don't want people to get the wrong idea.
Right. Yeah. As a local artist myself, thank you, because in addition to playing a lot of these other artists that we watch on television and hear on the radio that are superstars or whatever, you have also played regional and local artists. So thank you for promoting.
Let me just say this about that. Every reggae block dance, if I got a national act or international act, whatever act I had, I always had a local band opening for them. We start out with African drum and dance, getting the praises from the ancestors and the permission to conduct it. So they might play for a half an hour, the African drum and dance. And then I have an opening band, Mystic Vibration, Gullah Roots, whoever. And they would open, they get an hour. And then the headliner get like 90 minutes.
Yeah.
And do so.
The opener get an hour. Wow, that's big time.
Yeah, we need to fill some time.
Right? That's big time.
Yeah, so that's an hour and a half together with the African drum and dance, and now the opener. So now, yeah, it was beautiful.
So you just mentioned that, and I totally jumped to the music portion. Sorry, that's just me with the music. But I wanted to bring up earlier the Middle Passage ceremony that you do. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, yes, I'd be happy to. Every year, the Charleston Middle Passage Committee, I forget what our name is, but we remember those Africans that perished in the Middle Passage every second Saturday in June. We go to Fort Moultrie on Sullivan's Island, which was actually a location where those ships would come in. We go to the beach and we see the lighthouse, Morris Lighthouse, and we learn that the ships that were carrying the cargo of the human cargo would come past that lighthouse and come around to the dock and offload their cargo and put them in pest houses and clean them up before they send them downtown, our African ancestors, to be sold. We've been doing that since, I don't know, this is going to be our 22nd or 23rd year. We had to do it virtually last year. And we learned that other people are doing it in other cities. And I know that at first, people would come to our event, and then they say, I don't know if I can come next year. I'm from Detroit, and I don't know if I can come back. I said, well, all you got to do, wherever you are, just stop, second Saturday at noon and say a prayer, and then you'll be in conjunction with all of us. You'll be in cooperation with all of us. We're all praying at the same time, 12 noon, to bless those souls that litter the Atlantic Ocean from the west coast of Africa to our coast, okay? And it's a very spiritual experience, you know, because we honor those Africans that nobody honors. I mean, well, now there's an international committee. Mm-hmm. We call it ICAMP, the International Committee to commemorate the African ancestors of the Middle Passage. We have people doing this ceremony in Oakland, California, in Portobello, Panama, someplace in Trinidad. We had a fella doing it in Ghana. I think he passed away. And so many other cities. D.C. does it. Brooklyn does it. That's where I got it from. My friend Bill Jones, who I mentioned, took me to those reggae shows. He hit me to that. And my other brother, Adeyemi Bandelli from the East, he suggested in whatever year it was we started doing this, that we do that, because Charleston is one of those ports that these people came into. Mm-hmm. How can we not, you know? So that's another Kuumba thing, you know. So thanks for bringing that up. Yeah. This is very important.
It is
in my feeling, yeah.
Well, gosh, on behalf of myself, who thank you for all of the things that you've done for the community.
Hold on. Where's my camera?
You can be right there.
Right there?
Right there in the middle.
Okay. Every Saturday night from 10 to midnight on South Carolina Public Radio, check for the Roots Music Karamo, the place where the drum and bass set the pace. Okay.
The drum and bass set the pace. You got shirts like that?
Not yet.
Come on now. We get some shirts.
Hook me up. Okay. Come on now. I'm a one-man show. Over the years, I've had so much help doing this show, but nobody sticks because, as you know, the show must go on.
Right.
You know, and if something happens, you gotta make the show happen.
Yeah,
you know?
right.
So over the years, I'm grateful for people like Jack McCrae and Brother Nick and Ezekwe and Chair. When I got sick with I had brain surgery, I had heart surgery, they would take over the show and do it for 3 or 4 months until I could get back on my feet.
See, and like I said, when I first heard the first time, you know, I think I was in middle school or something, or you know, and Zeke and Cheo are my age, you know, and so I was like, they sound like me. They sound like little kids that are on this radio show. And they were doing it. They were setting the song up. They were back, you know.
I give them each like 10, 15 minutes of the show to do, you know, at first, because they had different favorite people. Zeke like Black Uhuru and Steel Pulse and Third World. Cheo like the individual artists, Gregory Isaacs and Johnny Osborne. So they'd have 10 minutes, and then back to what I do.
I specifically remember that because I had a little boom box and I would record it. And I remember one night, I think they played like 2 or 3 cuts from the Uprising album, back to back or something like that. Yeah. And that just sent me on my way. Yeah. You know, and then I came on and your voice comes on and it's just like, that's the thing, you know. Yeah. Wow, 42 years, that's a blessing.
It is, I'm grateful.
That's a legacy.
And these days, it's the only thing that I have to do. You know, I'm retired from a regular job, so the only thing I got to do is record Roots Music Karamo on Wednesday night. I got all week to get it together.
Well, people are still asking you to do stuff in the community and things.
Well, yeah, but, you know.
I mean, I remember a few years ago when I begged you to do a voiceover for me, you know, to introduce the Charleston Jazz Orchestra.
Well, yeah, that was fun too. I mean, come on, that's a one-time deal, one time per year.
Right. Okay.
That was fun to do.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate you being on our show once again. Thank you for all that you do and continue to do in the community.
You're very welcome, and thanks for inviting me.
Yes, sir.
I can't wait to see how this turns out.
Oh, it's going to be great. It's going to be great.
All right.
Thank you all very much, and we'll see you on the next episode.
I get scared sometimes.
But as I always say,
it's okay to be afraid.
As long as you face the fear.
And keep moving forward.
Wherever you are in life, count on the name trusted in insurance for over 70 years. BlueCross BlueShield of South Carolina.